Leonard Collins wanted respect, power, and fear. In Flint, he chased a crown that never existed. By 2006, his dream collapsed. Fast, loud, and permanent.
Welcome to Failed Gangster.
Flint, Michigan was already bleeding when Leonard Big Dreams Collins decided it was his moment. Factories gone. Jobs vanished. Hope thinning by the day. For Leonard, the streets didn't look dangerous, they looked empty, waiting to be claimed. He wasn't born into power. He wasn't trained by legends. But he believed something dangerous. That confidence alone could make him king. He talked bigger, moved louder, and dreamed faster than everyone around him. In a city shaped by loss, Leonard thought ambition was enough. What he didn't realize was that Flint doesn't crown kings, it buries them. The dream. Flint, Michigan didn't fall apart overnight. It eroded. By 2006, the factories that once fed entire neighborhoods stood hollow, their windows smashed out like missing teeth. Streets were quieter than they should have been. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that makes every sound feel dangerous. Sirens echoed longer. Arguments carried farther. Everyone felt watched, even when no one was around. This was the Flint Leonard Collins grew up in. Opportunity didn't disappear completely, it just changed shape. Where steady jobs once promised stability, hustles now promised survival. Money moved fast and vanished faster. Respect mattered more than safety. And reputation could be worth more than cash. Leonard saw all of this and thought he understood it. He wasn't born into chaos. He wasn't raised by gang legends or groomed by street kings. Leonard was ordinary. Average childhood. Average intelligence. Average circumstances. What made him different wasn't his background, it was his hunger. He hated being invisible. In a city where people were constantly losing something, jobs, homes, family, Leonard felt like he was losing something else, significance. He watched older guys command rooms without saying much. He saw how silence made people lean in, how fear traveled faster than facts. And he became convinced of one dangerous idea. Power wasn't earned. It was taken. Leonard didn't start with crime. Not seriously. He drifted. Odd jobs. Short stints doing whatever paid fast. But every failure chipped away at his patience. Every closed door reinforced the same thought. Playing by the rules didn't work anymore. That's when the streets started to look less like a risk and more like a shortcut. He began hanging around people who talked big and moved small. Guys who always had stories but never details. Leonard fit right in. He listened closely, absorbing language, posture, confidence. He learned how to sound important before he ever became important. The nickname came early. Big Dreams. At first, it was a joke. Leonard talked constantly about what he was going to do. The money he was about to make. The territory he planned to control. He spoke in futures, never presents. But repetition has power. Say something enough times and people stop questioning it. Soon, Big Dreams wasn't just a joke, it was his identity. And Leonard leaned into it. He dressed sharper than his means allowed. Spent money before he had it. Let people believe success was already behind him instead of still out of reach. In Flint, perception mattered. If you looked like you were winning, most people assumed you were. Leonard mistook that assumption for respect. The first hustles were small. Low risk. Low reward. But they gave him something he craved more than money, attention. People started recognizing his name. Not because of what he did, but because of how loudly he announced it. That should have been a warning. In cities like Flint, the loudest man in the room is rarely the most powerful. He's usually the most exposed. But Leonard didn't see exposure. He saw momentum. Every small win fed the fantasy. Every dollar reinforced the belief that he was on the right path. He started moving faster, skipping steps, ignoring the quiet rules others followed instinctively. He didn't understand patience. He didn't respect caution. Leonard believed confidence could replace experience. He started calling shots he couldn't enforce, making promises he couldn't back up, aligning himself with people who didn't care whether he succeeded or failed, as long as they benefited in the moment. And still he dreamed bigger. He talked about controlling sections of the city, about being that guy, about becoming untouchable. The irony was cruel. While Leonard imagined a crown, he hadn't even built a foundation. But Flint doesn't correct people gently. It waits. Behind Leonard's rise, if it could even be called that, were eyes watching quietly. Older players who'd survived long enough to understand cycles. Law enforcement who knew that loud ambition usually meant sloppy execution. Even his peers noticed cracks forming early. Leonard didn't. He confused motion for progress, noise for influence, attention for loyalty. The streets rewarded him just enough to keep him blind. By the end of this phase, Leonard, big dreams, Collins felt unstoppable, not because he was powerful, but because nothing had stopped him yet. And in his mind, that was proof enough. What he didn't realize was that Flint had already decided something important. He wasn't a king in the making. He was a lesson loading. And the city was patient. Building the illusion. By the time Leonard, big dreams, Collins felt like he was moving up, he was already moving wrong. Flint didn't reward speed, it punished it. But Leonard had never learned the difference between momentum and exposure. To him, staying quiet felt like falling behind. Silence looked like weakness. And weakness was something he refused to accept. So he got louder. He started showing up more. Talking more. Letting people see him more. In a city where survival depended on staying forgettable, Leonard made himself visible. Cars changed. Clothes upgraded. Cash flashed just long enough for others to notice. He wanted the streets to know his name, even if they didn't know what he actually did. That was the illusion. Leonard wasn't building an operation. He was building an image. He believed fear could be manufactured. That if enough people thought he had power, he eventually would. And at first, that logic seemed to work. Rumors spread. Whispers followed him into rooms. People assumed connections that didn't exist. In Flint, assumptions were dangerous, but they were also profitable. Leonard fed off that energy. He began calling shots without permission, stepping into lanes that weren't empty, making claims over spaces he didn't fully control. Not because he was strong, but because no one had challenged him yet. That yet mattered. Behind the scenes, his foundation was thin. No real structure. No disciplined crew. Just rotating faces chasing short-term gains. Loyalty wasn't earned, it was rented. And the rent was due constantly. Leonard didn't notice. He trusted fast and doubted slow. Anyone who questioned his pace got pushed away. Anyone who hyped him up stayed close. The circle around him wasn't built on respect, it was built on convenience. And convenience disappears fast. Money became a problem before he admitted it. Flash required upkeep. Image demanded sacrifice. Leonard spent more maintaining the illusion than strengthening his position. Every dollar that should have gone into stability went into being seen. That's when cracks started forming. Small things at first. Missed opportunities. Late payments. Conversations that stopped when he entered the room. People asking questions they shouldn't have known to ask. Leonard felt it, but he ignored it. He mistook paranoia for pressure. Instead of slowing down, he doubled down. Bigger moves. Bigger talk. Bigger promises. He wanted to outpace doubt before it caught him. But speed doesn't erase reality, it just runs you into it faster. The older players noticed. They didn't confront him. They didn't warn him. They didn't need to. Experience had taught them that men like Leonard burn themselves out. All they had to do was watch. Law enforcement noticed too. Leonard's name started appearing in places it shouldn't have. Conversations he thought were private weren't. People he trusted talked more than they should have. He didn't understand that visibility attracts attention from every direction, not just admiration. The streets were watching. The police were listening. And Leonard was still talking. His biggest weakness wasn't greed or ambition. It was belief. He believed the myth he was creating. Believed that surviving yesterday meant he'd survive tomorrow. Believed that no consequences so far meant no consequences coming. That belief made him careless. He skipped steps others knew better than to skip. He moved without confirmation. Trusted words instead of patterns. In Flint, patterns mattered. And Leonard's pattern was becoming obvious: loud rise, thin structure, reckless pace. The illusion was still holding. But illusions don't collapse slowly. They shatter. And Leonard was getting close to the sound. There's a moment in every false rise where confidence turns into certainty. For Leonard Big Dreams Collins, that moment came quietly. No celebration. No milestone. Just a feeling. The sense that he'd made it past the danger zone. That if something was going to stop him, it would have happened already. In his mind, survival had become proof. He felt untouchable. Leonard started behaving like a man with nothing left to prove. His movements grew casual. His words careless. He stopped checking behind him, not physically but mentally. Doubt faded. Caution disappeared. And in its place grew something far more dangerous than fear: ego. He began to believe Flint was reacting to him instead of the other way around. That his presence shifted rooms. That people adjusted their behavior because of him. Some did, but not for the reasons he thought. They were studying him. Leonard's territory wasn't large, but it was visible. A few blocks. A handful of connections. Enough activity to look impressive from the outside. He treated it like an empire. Spoke as if control was permanent. As if power, once touched, could never slip away. That illusion peaked when people stopped challenging him publicly. What Leonard didn't understand was that silence doesn't mean submission. In Flint, silence often means planning. The streets don't announce when they're done with you. They just stop protecting you. Leonard didn't notice that protection fading. His inner circle was thinner now. The excitement had worn off. The easy money dried up. Loyalty became conditional. Some people stayed, hoping the myth would hold. Others quietly prepared exits. Leonard sensed it, but dismissed it. He'd crossed into the most dangerous phase of ambition, believing he'd already won. He talked about the future like it was guaranteed. Made long-term plans without long-term security. His name carried weight now, but weight cuts both ways. The heavier it gets, the harder it falls. Law enforcement pressure tightened. Cars he didn't recognize appeared too often. Conversations felt shorter. Questions came indirectly. Leonard brushed it off as jealousy or coincidence. He'd convinced himself that attention was a compliment. It wasn't. Inside, the operation was fraying. Money wasn't consistent. Arguments started over scraps. People blamed each other. Leonard blamed everyone but himself. He demanded loyalty without providing stability. That's when trust began to evaporate. Someone talked. Maybe more than one. Maybe they justified it as survival. Maybe they were tired of risking everything for someone chasing an image. Leonard never found out exactly who betrayed him. By the time he realized betrayal existed, it was already baked into the system. The peak doesn't feel like danger. It feels like relief. Leonard relaxed at the worst possible moment. He moved openly. Met carelessly. Spoke freely. His schedule became predictable. His circle porous. He believed being known meant being safe. In reality, it meant being easy. Flint had seen this pattern before. Loud men burn bright. Quiet men survive. Leonard chose brightness. The crown he imagined never existed. And gravity was waiting. The collapse. The collapse never announces itself. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. It just arrives, quietly at first, then all at once. For Leonard Big Dreams Collins, the first sign wasn't police lights or handcuffs. It was absence. Phones stopped ringing. People who used to show up uninvited suddenly needed appointments. Meetings got pushed back, then canceled, then forgotten. Leonard noticed the gaps immediately, but he explained them away. Everyone gets busy. Everyone has off days. That's what he told himself. But deep down he felt it. The energy had shifted. Where there used to be excitement, there was distance. Where there was loyalty, there was hesitation. Leonard had built his entire identity on momentum, and now momentum was slowing. That terrified him more than open conflict ever could. Instead of adjusting, he reacted. Leonard got louder. He showed up more aggressively. Inserted himself into spaces that no longer welcomed him. He talked more, promised more, demanded more. He believed pressure could force respect back into existence. But pressure only exposes weakness. Behind the scenes, his structure was collapsing. Money wasn't coming in consistently. Arguments broke out over small amounts, signs of desperation. People questioned decisions they used to follow without comment. Leonard responded with ego instead of answers. That cost him. Because loyalty in the streets isn't emotional, it's practical. And Leonard was no longer practical to follow. Someone close to him made a choice. It wasn't dramatic. No confrontation. No warning. Just a quiet calculation. The risk of staying loyal had started to outweigh the reward. Leonard didn't inspire confidence anymore. He inspired concern. Information began to move. Conversations Leonard thought were harmless weren't. Details he shared casually became pieces of a larger picture. Law enforcement had been watching him for a while, not because he was powerful, but because he was predictable. Leonard didn't understand how dangerous predictability was. His routines stayed the same. Same locations. Same times. Same people. He believed consistency meant control. In reality, it made him easy to map. The pressure tightened slowly. Cars he didn't recognize lingered too long. Faces he didn't know appeared more often. Leonard noticed, but brushed it off as paranoia. He told himself he was thinking too much. He wasn't thinking enough. The final mistake wasn't a single act, it was a mindset. Leonard believed that because nothing had happened yet, nothing would. He mistook delay for safety. He confused patience with protection. When the moment finally came, it wasn't loud. No chase. No chaos. No chance to talk his way out. Just realization. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. The illusion shattered instantly. Everything Leonard thought he was disappeared the moment authority entered the picture. His name carried no weight. His confidence meant nothing. The myth collapsed under a single question. Where's your proof? Leonard had none. No structure. No insulation. No one willing to stand between him and the consequences. People he thought would step up vanished. Calls went unanswered. Messages stayed unread. The same city he tried to dominate moved on without hesitation. That's when it hit him. The streets hadn't betrayed him. They'd simply stopped caring. Leonard wasn't taken down by enemies. He wasn't defeated by rivals. He was undone by exposure. By noise. By the belief that ambition alone could replace discipline. The crown he imagined never existed. And once the illusion fell, there was nothing underneath to save him. ACT4 isn't about downfall. It's about clarity. The moment when fantasy collides with reality, and reality doesn't blink. The aftermath of a myth. After the fall, there is no soundtrack. No sirens echoing in memory. No crowds whispering a name. Just quiet. Leonard, big dreams. Collins didn't step into a legend. He stepped into obscurity. And for someone who built his entire identity on being seen, that was the harshest punishment of all. Time moves differently after everything is taken. Days blend together. Decisions replay endlessly. Leonard had nothing but space to think about the moments he ignored, the warnings he dismissed, the pauses he filled with noise, the advice he never wanted to hear. He realized too late that the streets don't reward ambition. They expose it. What Leonard lost wasn't just freedom. He lost the version of himself he believed in. No money. No reputation. No future built on his own terms. The image he crafted collapsed the moment it was tested. And once it fell, no one rushed to rebuild it. Because there was nothing solid underneath. Just talk. Just dreams. Flint didn't miss him. That's the truth most street stories leave out. Cities don't mourn fallen names unless they leave something real behind. Leonard didn't. No businesses. No families lifted. No structure that outlived him. The blocks adjusted. New faces appeared. New ambitions replaced old ones. Leonard became a reference point. A caution whispered quietly. Don't move like him. Don't talk like that. His story wasn't told with admiration, it was told with understanding. Because everyone in Flint had seen this before. Men who believed volume was power. Men who thought attention meant respect. Men who confused being known with being safe. Fear doesn't last. Reputation fades. Noise expires. What survives is discipline. Silence. Patience. Leonard learned that lesson when it no longer mattered. He wanted to be king of Flint. To carve his name into the city. To rise above the loss and decay and be remembered as someone who beat the system. Instead, the system barely noticed him leaving. That's the final truth of street myths. They don't survive time. They survive ego until reality corrects them. Leonard's story didn't end with glory or tragedy. It ended with clarity. In Flint, power isn't taken. It's maintained. And Leonard, Big Dreams Collins never learned how.
The outro of the story.
Leonard, Big Dreams Collins didn't lose because he was unlucky. He lost because he believed his own hype. The streets didn't test him, they exposed him. In Flint, survival isn't about dreams or titles. It's about discipline, silence, and knowing when to disappear. Leonard wanted to be remembered. And in a way he is, but not as a king. He's a warning. A reminder that fast power burns out faster than it rises. The city kept moving. New names replaced his. And his story faded into another lesson written in concrete and sirens. In the street life, the crown is imaginary, but the consequences are very real.